right, perfect. Yeah, so let's just begin, unless anyone has anything to start with, let's just begin by doing a little bit of paper talk, just to sort of set everyone up nicely. So for this paper, you've been assigned the task of actually doing philosophy for the first time. There's a joke that the person, and when I was an undergraduate, the guy who did I took an ancient philosophy class with, he said that to all of us for our final papers too. And I always sort of laughed at it and thought it was sort of appropriate. Right? You're all, and what do I mean by this? You all have to actually do philosophy. You actually have to look at two competing accounts of the world and decide which account is the correct one. Or at least the better one. Maybe correct is too far, but you at least have to decide which is the better one, which one is in some sense superior. And that's sort of, in a sense, what philosophy is, right? So far, all you've had to do is just sort of give an account of the world, describe the world in a certain sense. Now you need to evaluate. All right. So how can you do this? On the basis of what can this sort of evaluation be carried out, right? These aren't exhaustive, but here are at least some suggestions, some ideas for what you could look at for how to sort of carry out this kind of evaluation. One question you might ask, which fits our intuitions about religion better? So, let's just, again, all your papers look so different that this could look very different things in different cases, and that'll be true for all of these. But one question you could ask is like, okay, is my definition of religion, or is this other definition of religion, letting in stuff that most people just wouldn't say is religion, right? Sort of this is almost sort of a common sense kind of a criteria. Does my account sort of fit in this regard, right? If my account is saying that science is a religion, well, that seems really counterintuitive. That's not how we normally talk. Maybe you think that's therefore evidence against the view. Now, reasons to be concerned here, this is probably, everyone's going to do some version of this, right? We're always relying upon our intuitions in various sorts of ways. But it's frequently dangerous to rely on this kind of criteria too much. What seems intuitively obvious to us is often just a prejudice, right? Or it's often at the very minimum just completely arbitrary. Right? And you talk to someone from, say, a different culture, what seems obvious to them won't be what seems obvious to you. So relying upon this sort of vague intuitive notions, you're going to have to do some version of this in your paper, but it's probably at least shouldn't be all you look at. Okay, so what else? And again, people should feel free to jump in, chime in at any point, interrupt me, ask a question, any of that, right? All right, so if that's not enough, at least, what are some other possible criteria that you could use? Well, okay, here's one. Which one describes the phenomenon better? So here it's sort of a descriptive criteria, right? You're saying that there's some phenomenon out there in the world, and what matters is just describing that phenomenon accurately, right? So you'll need to have some very clear sense here of what phenomenon you're actually pointing toward, right? But there's some phenomenon in the world, and all I need to do is make sure that my account describes that phenomenon better than others, right? So here, does the account sort of correspond with the phenomenon of religion? This is usually tied up with some sense of sort of essence, and again, we don't have to mean anything sort of metaphysically sophisticated by this idea of essence, right? But that there's something happening in the world, what's describing it better? What's getting it closer to the heart of the matter about religion? Now, there's in some cases similar sorts of worries, or at least similar things you have to be wary of, right? Again, what you see as the essence of religion, there's at least a danger, perhaps, that that's just, again, going to be just some sort of arbitrary prejudice, right? That different cultures, that will cast this out differently, or even different people will cast this out differently. But here, at least, this is more than just some vague intuition. Here, at least, there's something we all sort of, at least purportedly, are going to agree about. We all purportedly agree about what phenomenon we're talking about. So then what matters is who's getting at that phenomenon better. Right, who's describing it here. So here, sort of the criteria is sort of like accuracy. Who's picking out features of the world better. But that's not the only ones either. There's other criteria you could use too. Right? You could go in a more pragmatic direction. What account is the most useful for talking about the world? One advantage, one thing I've always really liked about the sort of Al-Ghazali, Al-Farabi kind of a definition of religion is that it's actually a remarkably, it's always struck me at least as a remarkably useful way of thinking about the world. Right? Because the whole science religion thing to me just doesn't seem like that useful of a dichotomy. Like it seems like it's sort of a kind of a dead end in a lot of respects. Whereas the kind of way of thinking about almost as my own individual life, right? Thinking about all of these things just as ways of life, ways that I myself could live, that's always struck me as a more helpful way of thinking about my own life, rather than deciding if I want to, wear a lab coat and glasses, or whether or not I want to have ecstatic experiences in the backwoods or whatever, right? Like that just struck me as a more useful way of thinking about it. Now, you don't have to agree with me about that that's the case, right? But that would be sort of an example of sort of using this kind of pragmatic kind of criteria. What framework is the most helpful framework for sort of analyzing our own lives or the world in some sort of broader sense? So here would be here's a third option. Let me just give you one more. And again, this isn't an exhaustive list by any stretch of the imagination. These are just some things that you could be thinking of. Which account is the most sort of internally or logically consistent? It might be possible to come up with perhaps a useful account of religion. Maybe some people would say that some of the sort of definitions that the American pragmatists give are perhaps useful definitions of religion, but they might be sort of just logically or structurally inconsistent, right? So how well do the various sorts of accounts fit together? What problems or explanatory gaps are there within the accounts? And so here's an example of what I'm, the kind of thing I'm thinking about here. If you sort of have come to the conclusion from what we were talking about Buddhism, that it's actually super misleading to talk about the Buddhist Dharma as somehow a transcendent principle, that we should in some sense see it as kind of an immanent principle. Instead, if you see someone offering an account that just seems to contradict that, and Taylor very straightforwardly says in the introduction that Buddhism is an example for him of a religion because it's something that relies upon some sort of transcendent notion of salvation. So if you conclude that that's just sort of false or wrong, or a logically inconsistent use of the word transcendent, that would be a problem with his account. His account would then have a kind of inner contradiction within it. And you might well think, okay, well, an internally consistent account is superior to one that's sort of internally contradictory. It's frequently my objection to Nietzsche. Nietzsche is really good at saying why other people screw up, but his account, I'm not sure his account actually fits together into any sort of coherent whole. Okay. And so his critiques might well have certain value to them, right? But they don't come together to form a coherent system, so I'm deeply suspicious of Nietzsche's sort of ultimate philosophical position, that it doesn't seem to me as strong as a philosophical position that would have some sort of logical consistency. And of course, he would retort to this, well, you know, what makes logical consistency so important? And fair enough, right? Again, you don't have to like follow along with that. That's just an example, again, of someone sort of using this kind of criteria in action to sort of suggest why one view is superior to another one. I think Plato is more sort of logically internally consistent and more explanatory than Nietzsche's. And so therefore, I prefer Plato's account to Nietzsche's account. All right. So how are we doing here? A couple of people asked me for something of this sort. So I hope this is sort of a helpful sort of version of what it was you were sort of thinking of, right? This is not an exhaustive list. There's more criteria you could use besides this one, or besides these four. But this is maybe at least a starting point, right? Other things maybe you could throw in, maybe sort of just historical accuracy. So maybe like a subset of this, the second one. Maybe you could say a really important criteria is one that's able to account for the most sort of diverse set of sort of explanatory subjects. Right? Or the diversity of human religious expressions. Right? Someone could postulate that as a kind of value. Again, this is not supposed to be an exhaustive list. This is just be hopefully giving you some ideas. Why do you like different things? Why do you? What are some good reasons you can give for why you prefer one kind of account over another kind of account? All right. So how are people doing? Does anyone have any sort of questions or thoughts or anything about any of this? Anyone want to go further? Raise some other possibilities? Yeah, go ahead.
So two things. One, could we also give like an account of how religion changed, or just like how it's evolved? Sort of like a, I don't know, an archaeological description, you could say.
Sure. Absolutely. That's certainly an account that you can give. What you're going to have to be careful to do, though, is justify to some extent why we're still authorized to use the same word.
Right.
And indeed, that's not to say we couldn't, right? But if what it is to be religious has changed in some historical sense, then why can we use the same word to describe it still? Why not just say, oh, there was religion 1 that people did before Christ, then people were doing religion 2 after Christ? They're just unrelated phenomenon in some sense.
Right.
So if there's something about the phenomenon that makes it still correct to use the same term, that's what you'll need to sort of justify with that kind of archaeological or sort of more historically oriented sort of approach.
Mm-hmm.
But it can be quite successful.
Yeah.
Good.
And I'm guessing you kind of want the same thing with the second draft related to the first draft. You want like a rewriting of the second draft, fleshing out.
For almost all of the papers that I read, yeah, there will need to be more. There were still. Let me put it this way: there were still things that were not super clear about your initial proposal that need to get clearer before you can even fruitfully compare that proposal to another one. So yeah, I imagine that for most of you, it will be necessary to do at the very least really substantial revisions to that second draft, not just add it on a couple more pages. Good. Any others? Anything else with the paper whatsoever? This is at least our last shared class time, so our last time to talk together as a group, at least, about the paper or anything else really with the course either. So anything else? All right. Then let's just do some end of the semester stuff then. Let's just start wrapping up a little bit. So first of all, I just want to thank all of you for being here during this incredibly challenging and frustrating semester. I know you all have things going on in your lives that are far beyond just this one class and the difficulties with things that go far beyond this one class. So I really appreciate the effort that the people who are able to make the synchronous sessions have been putting in during those, and also that the people who sort of haven't been able to make the synchronous sessions, people working asynchronously, I also want to thank you all too for the good work that you've been putting in throughout the semester. Nothing we've done this semester, at least since spring break, has been ideal. We probably did about like 90% of what I was hoping to, but things just took a lot longer since we got back. So a few things did get lost, unfortunately. There were a few. We're gonna have more of a discussion about faith and the role of faith and sort of certain sort of epistemological questions that we just didn't get to. No American pragmatism, I'm afraid, and none of those pragmatic definitions of religion that I was talking about. We were going to look at those and ran out of time, unfortunately. But I hope at least what we were able to cover was valuable. My hope for the course, more than anything else, is that you're almost in a sense more confused about religion than you were when we started. That was actually what I'm more than you like feeling really confident about the subject. I'm almost just hoping that you've recognized what an odd and complicated phenomenon it is that we're really talking about here, and maybe called into question your own relationship to that phenomenon, whatever that relationship is. Right? I myself don't actually have a clear answer, so we focused this semester on sort of these two accounts, sort of the Taylor-ish sort of religion is something grounded in the transcendent account, and religion as basically just any way of life. I myself can't decide between the two. I sort of go back and forth between which one. I tend to lean more in the sort of Al-Farabi, Al-Ghazali direction, but sometimes there might well be something really meaningfully distinct about having a way of life that's transcendently rooted, and that might well be worth distinguishing from other possible ways of life in some sense. So I don't have a clear answer either. I lean towards Al-Ghazali and Al-Farabi, but I wouldn't by any stretch of the imagination claim that I'm settled either, so I hope you all now share my unsettledness. You share my good, that Socratic aporia, that Socratic not knowing what to do or not knowing what to say. That's where all the interesting philosophy actually happens. Also, I hope you just found it just sort of interesting as well. That we went over some stuff that you probably didn't know, maybe some of this interesting sort of historical, something that I actually didn't know before this, the fact that at the start of the semester, the original sense of the word religious in Old English was indeed someone who took a vow. I learned that when I was doing some prep work for the course, and I just think that's a fascinating fact. That's a fascinating little factoid about how they thought about what it was that they were doing. And how different it might be from what we would think about what it was that they were doing. We would have, including me, I would have said, yeah, people were really religious in the Middle Ages. In the Middle Ages, people would not have used that word to have described themselves. They would have used that word to describe a sort of a select few monks, right? These those who've taken vows. So things like that, I hope that was also super interesting, super, super helpful, giving you more sort of fuel for thought and also more fuel for being confused in your thinking too. More things to question, more things to wonder about. Rachel, go ahead. Let me get you, go ahead.
It's also interesting because people use the word religious in like different ways too. Like they're religious about their diet, or they religiously exercise and all this other stuff. So that further confuses the entire thing.
Yeah, exactly. In that sense, that almost more traces on with that Old English usage. That's like a little bit of the Old English usage sort of surviving almost, right? Like if you're religious about exercising on time, that sort of does mean something more like you've taken a vow above and beyond the usual with regard to exercise.
Yeah, like you promised yourself, like you have like a commitment to yourself to do those things.
Absolutely. And it might be a place where sort of that some of that Old English sense is sort of preserved, even despite the sort of modern use, how we can now sort of use that word, mostly not in that old sense, but some pieces of that is preserved. I think that seems absolutely right. Yeah. Seems like a great point. Yeah. So, let's just do a few little bits of business. Course evaluations should be up. You should be able to get into Canvas and do those. It's a very odd semester, so they don't really, like, in case you're worried about me like keeping or losing my job, don't worry, it doesn't matter. They're not going to count the evaluations for this semester for any of those purposes, but I actually would still really find it valuable to learn from you all what you thought worked about the course, what didn't. The whole course, really, I've never actually taught this course before. This is my first run through on it. So I'd love to know just in general what you thought worked and didn't work. But also I'd like to know, I've also never taught an online class before. So I'd like to know what you thought worked and didn't work about the online transition. what was sort of successful in it. And again, this also, both the people I'm talking to sort of right now synchronously who I'm looking in the face, but also async people in asynchronous land watching this video later. I'd also really like to know sort of how your experiences compared to the people who are working synchronously. I'll give you sort of an update. We had a faculty staff meeting yesterday. The current plan is still that we're going to meet normally in the fall, that the university is going to open as sort of normal. But right now, they're at least asking us to prepare as a contingency plan for some possible online switches or sort of like hybrid courses, where particularly for some of the larger classes where we might not meet in person as much because we can't socially distance. So we might like almost like meet once a week in person and then do everything else online to try to get more social distancing built in. So I will indeed at least need to have as contingency plans some online options for the fall. So I'd love to know what worked, what didn't work from your experiences so that I can have those contingency plans be good and be beneficial, for the next wave. I won't teach this class and probably not even next year, but when I teach it again, who knows what it will be in 2022 and what the world will look like in 2022, or if there's even still universities and jobs in 2022. So who knows, right? But assuming that the world continues anyway, it'd be really valuable for me to know what you all thought about the course. And so I really do value the feedback. So even if the university is not going to do much with it, it would be beneficial to me to sort of know what you thought worked and what you didn't think worked. Let's see, what are some other bits of business? Next week, I will have my office hours on Monday. So if anyone wants to do any paper discussion next week, the office hours on Monday will be like normal. I'm not planning on holding Friday office hours, and I can't imagine who would still want to talk to me at that point because everything's due for you all by that point. But if anyone does need to make an appointment with me next week for any reason, just let me know. I can still make appointments. I'm just not going to have scheduled office hours because I can't imagine who would come. Pretty much. Also, if anyone needs an extension on this last paper, let me know. I can give you until Thursday probably. I can't go past that really just because I got to get the grading in by the following Monday. But I can give you a little bit of an extension if one would be helpful in terms of your other classes and stuff. So just let me know if that would be the case. Let me see, anything else? Pretty much everything else I've gotten everything else graded. So your grade is completely accurate. I think I got the last daily assignment done yesterday for our class. So your grade should be pretty completely accurate, pretty full. One last little thing, and then we'll call it here for the semester. This class comes with a lifetime guarantee. And what I mean by that is that if any of you need anything from me for the remainder of your lives, do not hesitate to let me know. Okay? If you just want to talk some philosophy, that's why I'm here. You're not going to be bothering me. If you have a weird idea about religion over the summer, we'll set up a Zoom. We can do it. It's great. Right? Conversely, if you want to talk about anything else though, right? If there's something else going on that you think I can be in any way helpful with, please don't hesitate. Let me know. I'm happy to write you letters of recommendation. I'm actually, one of my students just got into graduate school actually this past week. It was awesome. Got in the University of Chicago, which is a great school. So I'm happy to write letters if you need any letters of recommendation written. If you ever need to get into a class that I'm teaching, let me know when you're in. Next semester in the fall, I'm teaching a 19th century philosophy class, so we'll do a little bit more Nietzsche in that one. We also get some Kant thrown in, get some Hegel, get some Marx thrown in, some lots of good stuff. Some stuff that will overlap a little bit with a few of the things we've talked about this semester, actually. And if any of you would like to take that class, please just let me know. There's technically a requirement, but no, there isn't. I'll give you an override, right? And that's not a problem. And that's for any of the classes that I'm going on to teach whatsoever. I'm here to do this. Like, this is why I'm here, the teaching thing. I have to do other things too, but I do those other things so that I can do this. So you're not going to be bothering me. Right? Don't hesitate. If there's anything I can do for you all going forward, please let me know what it is, and I'll be happy to do so. All right. I think that's what I have for the semester for you all. Again, thank you all very much. Thank you for bearing with all of the oddities and abnormalities of this semester. Have a wonderful summer. To those of you who are graduating, congratulations. And I'm sorry it was a weird last semester. But good luck on what you're going to do in the future. And for the rest of you, I sort of hope that I continue to see all of you as we sort of go and as your academic careers go. All right. Thank you all very much. If anyone wants to chat for a few minutes after class, that's fine. But otherwise, yeah. Class is dismissed. Thank you all for a wonderful semester.